Hey guys, tonight we're heading somewhere strange and sumptuous. The shimmering marble corridors of an old Ottoman palace, where the shadows are just a little too quiet and the walls might just remember things. We're peeling back the velvet curtain on one of the oddest rumors in historical Istanbul. A secret library, hidden deep in the Sultan's palace, filled not with ordinary books, but with spell books. Books that allegedly murmured their contents after midnight and turned ink into illusion. You definitely wouldn't have lasted 5 minutes in there. Not unless you had a charm or two tucked up your sleeve, or maybe a very polite ghost guide. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And tell me in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is right now. Midnight in Istanbul? Or maybe 3 a.m. in Ohio? Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're moving through the back passages of Topkapi Palace just before dawn, when even the birds are too polite to sing. The marble is cool under your feet, and the velvet hangings, dark green trimmed with gold, rustle faintly as you pass, though there's no breeze. Somewhere to your left, an oil lamp flickers. Somewhere to your right, a door is locked from the inside. You're not supposed to be here. But someone whispered about the old library again over dinner. Someone with wine-stained lips and a penchant for dangerous curiosity. They said it was still here, hidden behind a painted wall, sealed off after a certain unfortunate incident. You round a corner. The walls are painted with tulips and tigers, but look closely. One tiger is staring at you with unsettling awareness. You stare back. It blinks. You do not. Eventually, the wall grows bored and lets you pass. The Sultan's public library, of course, is vast and bright. But this other place, this rumored chamber of forbidden volumes, was never in the blueprints. It was said to be built as a gift for Sultan Murad III by an architect who owed a debt not to the crown, but to a jinn. Now you step past a heavy tapestry and find nothing. A blank stone wall, but you press your palm to it anyway, just to be sure it's warm. There are stories that Murad collected books from the edge of the empire, scrolls from Yemen, manuscripts from Persia, one particularly odd volume that came wrapped in reeds from a ruined temple along the Nile. He was fascinated with knowledge, yes, but also with control, of fate, of the stars, even of the hearts of his rivals. They say he brought in a woman once, a calligrapher from Cordoba, to transcribe a book no one else could read. She arrived with ink made from crushed beetles and vanished 1 week later. The ink pot remained, but the script she left behind danced when you weren't looking at it directly. Some say the palace cooks started hearing voices in the copper pots. Others found their dreams strangely vivid, with corridors that looked suspiciously like the ones you're walking now. One guard claimed a pile of books, spoke to him in Old Greek, and asked for more candles. Historians still debate whether these tales were exaggerated, palace gossip and moon-drunk nonsense. But the records are oddly vague. Several inventories of the palace library end with entries like Item 43, bound in green silk, sealed in brass, contents unknown. And then, a curious thing, the disappearance of an apprentice librarian. No name, no birth record, just a note scrawled in a margin. She followed the whispers. You pause before an ancient cedar door, carved with swirling arabesques. This wasn't here before, was it? A cold draft drifts beneath. It smells like saffron, ash, and lavender. There's a tension to the air, not fear exactly, but anticipation. The feeling you get just before opening a box you were told never to open, like you're being watched by something patient, something that's been waiting a long, long time. You place a hand on the handle. It doesn't resist. It simply opens. Inside, darkness, and just at the edge of hearing, like breath on glass, a whisper that might be your name. You step in. The room is round, with books lining every inch of the curved walls. Not neatly arranged, these books spill and slump, and lean against one another like sleepy cats. Some are bound in leather, others in what looks suspiciously like feathers. A few are glowing faintly. One has eyes. There's no dust here, despite the centuries. And no obvious light source, yet everything shimmers slightly, like the walls are lit by memory alone. You reach for a slim, indigo-bound book with a clasp shaped like a serpent's tail. It unlatches itself. The pages flutter open, then stop. A line appears in golden script. To read is to remember what never was. You smile, of course it would be cryptic, and yet you understand. Somewhere, a page turns itself. Another whisper. Something chuckles softly from a high shelf. You're not alone, but for the first time in a long while, you don't mind. You sit down on the plush carpet, and the floor feels like it was made just for you, and as you read, the room breathes in around you, quietly, patiently, like a story that's been waiting to be heard. The book in your lap doesn't end, not really. Every time you think you've reached the final page, a new one appears, sometimes blank, sometimes etched with diagrams that look suspiciously like blueprints for impossible machines. Others are written in languages you've never seen but which feel eerily familiar. You don't even question it. Your fingers glide over ink that's somehow warmer than the paper itself. Then you hear his name. Not aloud, of course. Nothing in this room is that straightforward. But the name slips into your mind like steam curling into a bath. Jafar ibn Alim, the court star scholar during the late 1500s, a man who arrived from Samarkand with 7 trunks, 2 falcons, and a voice like honey steeped in fire. He was supposed to be an astronomer, but his interests wandered. Just like yours. Some claimed he could summon rain in a jar. Others whispered that he once turned a thief into a teacup. You know, standard early modern academic behavior. You flip a page and see a painted image. He's seated cross-legged on an embroidered cushion, ink staining his fingers, surrounded by scrolls and glass orbs. His expression? Smug, like he just figured out how to fold the universe into an envelope and mail it to himself. You hear the soft echo of footsteps, as if the room itself remembers him. They say Jafar was obsessed with unity, the idea that science and sorcery were simply 2 ends of the same ribbon. He studied the hum of metals, the memory of stones. His quarters were cluttered with charred feathers, sea silk, and vials labeled in rhyming couplets. And he didn't just read spellbooks, he wrote them. His masterpiece, the Codex of 9 Breaths, bound in eel skin, rumored to contain enchantments that could accelerate time, silence grief, and make your worst enemy hiccup uncontrollably for 9 days straight. You know priorities, but here's the twist. The Codex disappeared right after the Sultan fell into a week-long trance, woke up quoting Babylonian poetry, and demanded that all the tulips in the garden be dyed blue. Scholars still debate what actually happened. Some think Jafar fled, fearing punishment for meddling with the Sultan's dreams. Others claim he was turned into a candelabra and now resides in the treasury. You lean back against the wall of the library. It feels like velvet-covered stone, firm but forgiving, kind of like the voice of a librarian who's clearly judging your book choices but is too polite to say so. As you breathe in, you swear the room adjusts around you. The books sigh gently, as if they remember Jafar too. The faint scent of cardamom drifts past. You notice a narrow ladder leading up toward a second level. There's no obvious ceiling, just darkness twinkling faintly, like stars reflected in ink. Curiosity tugs at you like a child with sticky fingers. You climb. The upper shelves hold older texts, some wrapped in twine, some stitched shut with golden thread. One is humming. Another is vibrating very slightly, like a cat purring in anticipation. You run a hand across the spines and feel heat. Cold, a sudden jolt of static, and one suspiciously damp sensation. You decide not to investigate further. Then you find it. A journal. Slim, worn, written in Jafar's unmistakable hand. Its first page reads, "To understand a spell, you must forget your name." Cheerful. The next entry describes the moment Jafar met the Sultan. The air was heavy with incense and unspoken threats. The Sultan wore emeralds the size of olives. Jafar wore a fox-tooth charm and the smile of someone who knew how the story would end but was pretending not to. You turn another page, it's blank. Then words begin to appear, slowly, like mist forming letters. He is listening, so we must be brief. Your skin prickles. You flip the book. Shut, and the entire upper level goes still. Not silent, still. Like something just stopped breathing. You descend the ladder carefully, heart thudding, not in fear exactly, but in that thrilling, slightly reckless way that you might feel just before pushing open a door labeled "Do Not." Enter under penalty of extremely dramatic consequences. Back on the main level, the books resume their quiet murmuring, and then you see it, tucked in the far corner, half buried beneath a stack of scrolls and what might be an enchanted tax record. A letter, unopened, wax seal intact. The seal bears Jafar's personal sigil, a crescent wrapped in ivy, pierced by a quill. You pick it up. The wax warms under your touch. The parchment hums faintly. You haven't even opened it yet, but you already feel it. This is the next thread in the story, the next spell, the next risk, the next dream. And just outside, through a narrow stained glass window, the moon hangs, low and golden like it's waiting for your decision. Do you open it? Of course you do. The seal cracks with a gentle pop, like a walnut surrendering, and the letter unrolls itself in your hands, obedient as a trained dog with secrets in its mouth. The ink is deep indigo, so dark it almost gleams black in the dim light. You don't recognize the language at first. The script loops and dances like it's trying to escape the page, each letter stitched with tiny marks that look suspiciously like stars. But here's the odd thing. You understand it. Not because you studied it, or because it's being magically translated. No, you understand it the same way you sometimes know someone's about to text you, or that a song on the radio is playing just for you. The letter begins. To the seeker who arrives after the flame has dimmed. Dramatic, right? But what follows is even stranger. Jafar explains that this room, this impossibly still library, is only a shard of the real one. A copy. A shadow cast across time and memory. The true library, he says, lives between places. It doesn't obey geography or physics or library card systems. It flickers into being where it's needed and disappears again like a sneeze you almost had. He claims it was built by spellwrights and sandwalkers, map makers who charted not oceans but emotions. It was protected by librarians who carried keys, saying their teeth and shelved books based on smell. It held every spell ever dreamed, including the ones never spoken aloud. One such spell? The vanishing of 1001 names, used only once. By the Sultan himself. Here's where history gets a little slippery. You've probably heard of Sultan Bayezid II, the scholar, the mystic, the ruler with a beard so majestic it had its own poem. What most people don't know is that late in his reign he began forgetting things. Not in the charming "where did I put my shoes" way, in the terrifying "what is a son and why is he crying" way. Desperate, he begged Jafar for help, not with medicine, with memory, and Jafar, being. Well, Jafar created a spell that didn't just heal the Sultan's forgetfulness, it erased everything painful the Sultan had ever known. That included rebellions, betrayals, wars, and, unintentionally, his first wife, his poetry, and the name of the library itself. Poof. Gone. Historians still argue whether this was mercy or madness, whether Jafar was a savior or a saboteur, whether the spell worked too well or not at all. You just know that you're standing in a version of the place that was forgotten, and the letter isn't finished. Jafar writes that remnants of the original library were scattered, hidden in carpets, etched into ceramic, whispered into fountains. Some ended up as lullabies, others became rumors. A few, he feared, might fall into the wrong hands. He concludes the letter with a single instruction. Find the page that sings. That's it. You blink, and then you hear it. Not music, exactly. More, like a single note, low, rich, vibrating through your bones like when a train is coming, and you feel it in your feet before you hear the horn. You follow it, past the scrolls, past a display of knives labeled in cursive Latin and cheeky Ottoman slang, past a shelf of cursed cookbooks. One promises eternal youth through pickling. You don't look too closely. Finally, you reach a glass case. Inside is a single page floating in mid-air. The glass is warm to the touch and slightly fogged, like it's been breathing. The page shimmers, not with light, but with movement, like oil in a bowl of water. The note grows louder, humming under your skin now. You open the case. The instant. Your fingers touch the page. The hum cuts off, clean like a switch thrown in a storm. The room holds its breath. Then, slowly, the page unfolds. Not just on the surface, but within itself. Layers bloom outward, revealing diagrams, symbols, fragments of spells. One illustration shows a tower built from books. Another depicts two hands, one human, one made of flame, reaching toward a crescent moon. You read one line aloud, just a whisper. Immediately the library shifts. The walls ripple like silk in wind. Shelves stretch upward, lanterns dim. The air becomes thick with spice, clove, cinnamon, something darker beneath. A soft voice echoes, not in your ears, but in the folds of your mind. You have found the hinge. Now find the door. It's very polite for a magical hallucination. You tuck the page into your sleeve. It folds itself obediently, paper remembering its purpose. You turn around and realize the room has changed. The doorway you came through is gone. In its place is a spiral staircase descending into a soft golden glow. Of course you follow it, because you're curious, because you're not afraid, because this is what the story always wanted. The staircase curves downward like a nautilus shell carved into the spine of the earth. Your steps make no sound, not even that faint shuffle you'd expect from old stone. Each riser feels warm beneath your feet, like it's been waiting specifically for you. You pass by torches that don't flicker but seem to hum, their flames bending in slow motion, frozen mid-dance. You reach the bottom expecting maybe another library, another long hall, a crypt even. But what opens before you is a garden, underground. An entire blooming oasis beneath the palace, tucked like a secret under layers of history and dust. Palm trees stretch toward a ceiling of star-shaped glass panes. Hanging lanterns sway gently even though there's no wind. A long reflecting pool cuts through the middle of the space, its water glowing with that same golden hue, like sunlight that forgot to fade. Along its edges, books lie open on stone. Benches unbothered by time or dew, and at the center of it all, seated beneath a carved arch of ivory and lapis, is a woman. She's old, but not in the usual way. Her wrinkles are like script lines, her eyes like old ink polished by candlelight. Her robes shimmer between indigo and midnight blue, speckled with tiny points of gold thread. You realize after a moment that they're constellations. She speaks before you can. You've brought the hinge, she says simply, nodding toward your sleeve. You pull out the folded page. It has grown warmer now, pulsing faintly, like it's remembering how to be alive. She gestures for you to sit beside her. "You're not the first," she murmurs, her voice like silk, worn smooth over centuries. "But you're the first in a long while." She tells you her name is Nura, just Nura, and that once she was the keeper of names. Before the spell, before the forgetting, before the Sultan gave away his memory like a child releasing a balloon. She had stayed behind, bound to the last page, guarding the remnants of the real library, what she calls the seed. You ask quietly if this is still part of the spell. She laughs. Not mockingly, but like someone delighted by a good riddle. "Yes and no," she says. "The spell is alive, like ivy. It grows in strange directions. Some parts rot, others bloom." You ask her what the page actually does, and she smiles. "It asks a question," she says. "And if you answer it truthfully, it writes back." Now, of course, this raises so many questions. What kind of question? What does it mean to answer truthfully? And what happens if you lie? But you know better than to ask directly. Instead, you trace your fingers along the edge of the page, feel the warmth in the fold and wait. Sure enough, the paper begins to shift. The ink glides across its surface like a school of fish. Then it settles into a single sentence. "What would you forget if you could?" Oof, that's not the gentle, "what's your favorite color?" kind of question. That's the kind of question that digs in its heels and refuses to be shrugged off. You hesitate. Of course you do. Nura watches you with eyes like old stars. "You can whisper it," she says. "The page will hear." So you do. You don't speak it aloud to the air. You speak it inward, to the folds of the spell, to the humming magic stitched into the vellum. And the moment you do, the page glows not brightly, just enough to cast a soft reflection on the pool nearby. The sentence vanishes, replaced by lines of text that form slowly, patiently, like a letter arriving across time. It tells a story, one you recognize, because it's your story. Except, not quite. It's you, but in a city made of blue glass. It's you, but with a different name. It's you, but without the thing you chose to forget. You sit there a long time, reading. Beside you, Noura doesn't interrupt. Eventually, the ink begins to fade. The page folds itself again. The spell for now has finished speaking. Noura places her hand over yours. There are many kinds of forgetting, she says. Some are healing, others are escape. But the rarest kind, the most powerful, is when forgetting becomes a form of remembering. You nod. Slowly. You're not sure you fully understand, but the words settle somewhere deep in your chest, warm and dense like a piece of bread fresh from the oven. The pool begins to ripple. The lanterns above grow dim, and from the far end of the garden another doorway opens. Not a grand arch this time, just a modest wooden door with an iron handle, half hidden behind a curtain of flowering vines. Without a word you rise. The page is still tucked in your sleeve, and as you step through the doorway the air shifts again, this time cooler, tinged. With Sultan something older still, because the library isn't finished with you yet. You emerge not into another chamber, but into a corridor that seems carved from ancient coral. Walls veined with fossil spirals, ceilings glittering with embedded pearls that shimmer like stars. The air is damp and tinged with brine, like the breath of a sleeping sea creature. Somewhere far off you hear water dripping in an endless rhythm. Drip, drip. Like a heartbeat that forgot how to hurry. Your boots leave soft prints on the stone floor, which looks suspiciously like pressed sand. The door closes behind you with a soft click, and the corridor tilts gently downward. At first you think you've walked into another kind of vault. But no. This is older. Wilder. You pass murals chiseled into the walls, scenes of men and women, clutching scrolls while riding whales, or whispering to stars that have mouths. One figure holds a book open toward the moon, and the moon seems to lean in. You're not entirely sure if these are myths or instructions. Eventually, the corridor ends at a gate woven of iron and seashell. Beyond it lies the archive of weathered names. At least that's what the plaque says, though you're fairly sure the plaque only appeared once you thought the question in your head. Inside, the room is circular and much larger than it should be. Think cathedral built by someone obsessed with spirals. The domed ceiling is made of thick glass, and through it you glimpse a night sky that doesn't quite match the one you're used to. Stars arranged like musical notes, clouds forming, runes in slow drifting patterns. Books here are not on shelves, they float. Some spin slowly like planets, others hover, closed tight as clamshells. They drift near you, as if sniffing for recognition, before bobbing away again. One finally presses itself into your palm. Its cover feels like smooth driftwood. The title burns faintly in shifting script. The names that were taken twice. You open it, half expecting it to shriek or vanish. Instead, it sighs. And then, how do you describe it? You hear the names, not read. Hear whispers, some long, some clipped. Some sung like lullabies. You don't understand them, but they brush against your mind like feathers dipped in memory. And then it happens. You hear your own name. Not the one on your ID, or the one your dentist calls out in the waiting room. The first name. The real one. The name you had before the world started labeling you. Before school uniforms and online forms and awkward small talk at family weddings. The book closes itself with a soft puff. You feel like you've just remembered a dream you didn't know you had. And from the side of the chamber, a new figure steps forward. This one robed in sea-colored silk, a sash of pale saffron at their waist. They bow, not out of deference, but as if greeting an old friend. They introduce themselves. As Ibn Jahlil, the cartographer of lost meanings. I've been waiting, they say, with a smile like a tide returning. You're the one who brought the hinge, aren't you? You nod. They nod back, then raise their hands, and the floating books drift aside. parting to reveal a great mosaic on the floor beneath you. It's a map, but not of land or sea. A map of language itself, words branching like rivers, looping and knotting like vines, forgotten scripts, dead dialects, curses that became prayers, and vice versa. You even see a word you swear you made up in middle school as a joke. It's there with definition and all. Jalil points to a corner of the mosaic. That's where the spell first broke, they whisper. Where forgetting began to outpace remembering, and then they point to the opposite side. That's where it can be rewritten. You blink. It, the spell, they say. All of it. The Sultan's spell. The spell that silenced half a library and locked the rest in metaphor. You've seen its pieces already. The hinge, the question, the name. Only one thing remains. You glance at your sleeve. The page is still warm, but how do I... Ah, they interrupt, raising one finger. The question isn't how, it's why. A heavy silence settles, the kind that doesn't demand an answer so much as offer space. Eventually, they nod toward a spiral stair in the center of the room. It's time to go higher. You take a breath, one of those long, soul-scooping kinds. And as you place your foot on the stair, you notice the books have stopped whispering. They're listening. Step by step, you ascend. The spiral stair is carved from polished obsidian, cold underfoot and gently luminous at the edges, as if it remembers starlight. There's no railing, just open air, and that quiet hush you only find in places where thought is considered sacred. The higher you climb, the thinner the air becomes, but not in a way that chokes. It's more like your lungs are learning a new rhythm, slower, softer, tuned to something older than oxygen. At the top, you emerge, into the chamber of final ink. It's simple compared to the rooms before. No floating tomes, no glowing mosaics, no robed librarians. Just a small table made of old cedar, a brass oil lamp flickering with golden light, and in the center, a single quill suspended above an unmarked scroll. You know, without knowing, that this is what Jalil meant. This is where the rewriting happens. The scroll seems to pulse faintly, as if aware of your presence. The ink, well beside it, swirls with something darker than black, like night folded in on itself. And that's when you hear him, the Sultan, not as a ghost or a mirage or some grand booming voice from above. No, he's sitting right there on a cushion in the corner, cross-legged in clothes that look remarkably comfortable. Soft russet robes, bare feet, a lazy smile playing at his lips. Didn't expect it to end here, did you? He says. All those puzzles, all those riddles, only to arrive at a piece of paper. He reaches over and plucks a date from a small silver dish, pops it into his mouth, chews thoughtfully. See, when I made the spell, I thought I was preserving knowledge, locking it away until the world was ready, you know, like putting a cake in the freezer for a future party. He laughs softly. But turns out, I wasn't saving it. I was hiding it, even from myself. You sit, unsure whether to speak. I forgot things, he admits. Little things at first, then the big ones, names of people I loved, spells that healed, songs that could change weather. I started losing whole pieces of myself. And by the time I realized, well, the library had gone quiet. He gestures toward the scroll. That's where you come in. You glance at the quill. I don't know what to write, you say. The Sultan shrugs. You don't have to know, you just have to remember. You hesitate, then step forward. The moment your fingers graze the quill, you feel it. Memories not, your own images blooming like ink in water. A woman stitching stars into a velvet sky. A child teaching birds to spell. A man whispering his final word into the spine of a book. The quill dips into the dark ink. You breathe and you begin to write. Not with your hand, though your hand moves. Not with your thoughts, though they swirl. And hum, you write with something deeper. You write the word that bridges forgetting and remembering. The word that unlocks not just doors, but stories. The kind of word that doesn't mean anything until it means everything. And when it's done, the ink fades into the scroll like breath on glass. The lamp flickers, and the Sultan smiles. That's it, he says. You've rewritten the spell, not to lock knowledge away, but to let it find its way back. He stands stretching like someone waking from a long nap. Come on, I'll walk you out. As you descend, the corridors are different, lighter. You pass halls now filled with voices, librarians humming as they reshelve volumes, children reading aloud to plush bears, glowing letters drifting above tables like lazy fireflies. The whole library has awakened. At the entrance, Jalil waits, holding the door open. You step into the sunlight, real, honest daylight. For the first time in what feels like centuries, the garden you saw in your dream. It's here. Same scent of jasmine, same soft wind, same bee hovering lazily near your ear. You glance behind. But the entrance is gone. Just a wall of ivy now. The Sultan's library is hidden again, but not because it's sealed, because you're carrying it with you now. You walk down the hill, past trees swaying like they're waving goodbye. The weight in your pocket is gone. The page has vanished, but its warmth lingers. And the next time you open a book, maybe, just maybe, you'll hear a whisper, a name, a story, a spell returning home. The sun dips low, casting long amber streaks across the earth. Your steps slow. The bird song turns into lullaby. Trees blur into silhouettes. The air hushes, and you breathe, deep, soft, slow. Whatever questions remain can wait. For now, the library is safe. The spell is mended. And you are whole. End of script. Sweet dreams.